One stormy Sunday morning, a desperate crowd filled the massive hall of Holy Ground Ministry. Whispers rolled through the room as they raised their neck to catch a glimpse of Prophetess Cassandra, popularly known as Mama Celestine. Some said she would pierce through a person's soul, revealing secrets no one ever knew, while others swore that she had the power to speak directly with God. But today, something unsettling hung in the air, just as a scream echoed from the side of the hall from a lady named Angela. Mama Celestine's trusted aide Angela rushed to the front, wide-eyed and shaking, exclaiming, "She did it again! Mama healed him!" The congregation erupted in cheer, but Elizabeth, a quiet churchgoer who had attended for months, noticed something strange. She had seen this very crippled man walking around the market just days before. Thoughts clawed at her heart, but who would believe her? Mama Celestine was powerful, untouchable, and her followers will fight you to protect her. Is this not the same man that she saw in the market, walking around, buying things and making noise in the market? How come today in church he's acting like a cripple and they are saying that Mama Celestine has healed him and now he's no longer a cripple? When did he become a cripple? Nevertheless, she kept these thoughts to herself. Years ago, Cassandra had been a simple girl from a humble home and God-fearing family. Her parents raised her to be honest, devoted, and walk in the light. She would be the shining hope of their church, leading Sunday school, organizing prayers, and singing in the choir. Everyone admired her. Everyone adored her. Some people even use her as the yardstick for their children. Some even said that this girl was destined for greatness. But for some reason, she missed her way and took a dark direction. Years later, after struggling to build her ministry without suspicion, Cassandra attended a grand conference for pastors. There, she met several famous preachers who seemed to hold a secret power. The leader, Pastor Benjamin, pulled her aside. "You are trying to be godly," he said, "but you will never make an impact until you are willing to sacrifice." Cassandra, being a God-fearing woman, felt that maybe Pastor Benjamin is trying to bring her into light of how much God has helped them and how much God is leading them in order to help her make more impact for the kingdom of God. But little did she know that he was talking about something else. "Madam, stop trying to be godly." That was what he said to her. "When you follow the godly way, you will not make any impact." He talked about a special ceremony, one that will require a significant offering from her. At first, Cassandra hesitated, but Pastor Benjamin promised her that it would grant the influence she desperately needed. Driven by her desire to succeed, she agreed. That night, she participated in a strange ritual, giving up her chance to ever have children as a sacrifice, while the pastors gathered around. Chanting as Cassandra's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and anticipation. When it was over, she felt a strange power settle around her like a dark cloak. She couldn't explain it, but something had changed. After returning from the conference, Cassandra's fortune began to shift. People started flocking to her services, and soon the entire country heard about Cassandra, and that was when she was nicknamed Mama Celestine. It got to a point that her church auditorium could not even contain the members that were coming. Cars of different types were parked outside. People of different caliber started flocking to her church. Her church began filling up with members from every corner of Nigeria and beyond. Her fame grew, and with it grew her wealth. But this was only the beginning, unknown to her followers. Mama Cassandra, that is also Mama Celestine, also known as Prophet Cassandra, the woman they worshipped, was far more than just a deceitful prophetess. Beneath her human appearance lay a dark ancient secret. Cassandra was half human and half serpent, a breed of darkness whose origin could trace back to the mysterious underwater covenant she had entered after joining the cult. After joining the cult with Pastor Benjamin, half of her humanity was taken away alongside her ability to bear children. So she was half serpent and half human. But physically, she appeared as a woman to people. Every midnight, she would disappear from her luxury mansion, leaving the words of humans behind. In the dead of the night, she would shed her human form and transform into a creature with skills as dark as midnight. This transformation marked her journey to the underworld, where her true alliance lay. Cassandra slipped slightly into the river behind her mansion, vanishing beneath the water as if swallowed by the earth itself. There in the depths, she would join her occultic brothers and sisters, other pastors, prophets, apostles who had pledged themselves to the marine kingdom in order to get power to influence people in the world. They shared twisted wisdom, dark secrets, and skills to keep their congregation bound in deception for Cassandra. This was where she drew her power. The Marine Queen, a towering figure with serpentine features, bestowed upon her strength, wisdom, and ability to see into the lives of her followers. But there was a price for this power: her soul, her humanity, and most dangerously, her womb. Cassandra's sacrifices to the marine kingdom had left her bearing the mark of a trade she willingly made to gain authority and influence in the physical world. Back in her church, no one suspected a thing. To them, Cassandra was a holy prophetess, and they were oblivious to her midnight disappearance. Nobody knew that she disappears because nobody dares step into her room at midnight. They don't even hold vigil in her house. Her congregation continued to grow as people came from far and wide, people desperate for miracles, people desperate for healing and deliverance. Those who sought her favor were willing to pay any price. People paid from cash to livestock to precious family inheritance. People were giving her the inheritance of their forefathers just to have an audience with her. They sought her so much, and Cassandra's ministry had become a relentless machine, swallowing people's wealth and hope alike. Within months, she began implementing strange new practices. Each member was handed a mirror, which she called the mirror of life. With a commanding tone, she would say, "This mirror is blessed by the Almighty Himself. Every morning, look into it, speak to it, and you will see the part of your spirit that needs healing." Her congregation cherished these mirrors, believing they were a path to spiritual growth. But in reality, those mirrors were tools connected to the marine world. Through them, Mama Celestine could peer into the members' life, studying their weakness, secrets, and fear. One day, Mama Celestine called a young woman named Kyla to the front. "Last night you argued with your husband about his job, didn't you?" she said with a slight smile crossing her lips. Kyla gasped. "How did you know?" The congregation erupted in cheer, marveled at Mama Celestine's habits to know every detail of their life. In truth, she had used her mirror to summon Kyla's spirit the night before, gathering all she needed to make the revelation sound divine. The church soon introduced holy water, miracle oil, bottled with simple labels but sold at exorbitant prices. Cassandra would wave her hands over the item, claiming they could cure any sickness, fix any marriage, and even bring financial blessing. When Elizabeth saw a struggling mother give her last saving for a tiny bottle of miracle oil, she clenched her feet, her suspicion deepening. The next Sunday, Mama Cassandra's voice echoed through the church as she scanned the congregation with piercing eyes. Her gaze landed on a young man seated in the middle row. His name was Owen, a recently returned graduate who had just come back from overseas with his mother to visit Cassandra's church. Having heard of Mama Celestine and her supposed divine revelation, they thought it was wise to seek a blessing. Cassandra's face lit up as she beckoned Owen forward. "Young man, please come forward." Owen hesitated, but his mother nudged him, whispering, "Go, this would be your blessing." As Owen stepped up to the front, Cassandra raised her hand in what appeared to be a gesture. "Something troubling to me, my son," she said. "The Lord has revealed something to me, something troubling." She took a deep breath and said to him, "What do you have to say about this?" The congregation was silent, hanging on every word. Cassandra looked at Owen with a heavy gaze, shaking her head slowly. "Young man, your life battery is running dangerously low. I see darkness ahead. If nothing is done, you risk losing your career, your marriage, and more." Owen felt his heart beginning to pound. His life battery, he did not understand. But who will see Cassandra's grave expression and not fear? He swallowed nervously. "Mama, please, what does that mean?" Cassandra placed a comforting hand on his shoulder and lowered her voice so that the tension in the air thickened. "It means, my son, that if something isn't done quickly, you won't live to see your 30s, your children, your marriage, all that will be lost unless you act now." Owen's face turned pale and his mother grasped, holding her hands in fear. But Cassandra continued, raising her hand as if bestowing hope upon him. "The Lord has provided a solution," she said. "There is a way to renew your life battery to ensure you live a long and prosperous life." She leaned in closer, her eyes narrowing with intensity. "You must make a sacrifice, a powerful seed, something that costs you dearly, for the Lord blesses those who give from the heart." Owen's mother held him tight, her eyes wild with worry. "What kind of sacrifice, Mama?" she asked. Cassandra nodded as if she expected the question. "The Lord has directed me," she said in a hushed tone. "This your life can be renewed with a sacrifice of cow. Not just any cow, but one that symbolizes new life, strong, healthy, and without blemish." Owen's face reeled at the thought. He had heard of sacrifices, but never he been asked to make one for himself. "Mama, I don't know where to get a cow now," he said, stammering. Cassandra waved her hand, dismissing what he said. "Don't worry, my son. The Lord understands. You need not to go and find a cow yourself. You can simply convert this sacrifice into a monetary offering. Give the amount and I will take care of the rest. The church has a way to handle this thing. You just need to be obedient and trust in the word of the Lord." Owen's mother whispered frantically into his ear, urging him, "Owen, don't delay. Just do as Mama Celestine said." "Mama Celestine says your life is worth more than any money." Reluctantly, he agreed, pulling out his checkbook and writing a large sum. Cassandra accepted the check with a smile of satisfaction. "My son, your obedience has pleased the Lord. Your life is now in God's hands and He will reward you with your sacrifice." Relieved but still shaken, Owen returned to his seat, his mother clinging to him and thanking the prophetess profusely. But what he didn't know was that Cassandra had no intention of buying any cow or making any sacrifice. As with many others, she took the money straight to her ongoing project fund, adding it to the luxurious mansion she was constructing on the outskirts of town. This wasn't the first time that she had used such tactics to squeeze offering from the congregation, and it won't be the last. Owen's expression was just one of many in Cassandra's church. Elizabeth watched from a distance as she gathered more stories like this. She saw the pattern and knew that these prophecies were nothing more than calculated lies to drain her members financially. She began to find a way to expose her evil doing. Though she knew it wouldn't be easy, she prayed that her efforts would one day set people like Owen free, opening their eyes to the truth about Cassandra's scheme. Elizabeth's resolve was strengthened by her desire to protect innocent lives from falling into the same trap. Despite her growing doubt, Elizabeth kept attending the church, quietly observing. Then one service, she noticed something that she couldn't ignore. An elderly man in a wheelchair was brought to the altar. Mama Celestine placed her hand on his forehead, murmuring a prayer, and the man suddenly stood up, shaking with supposed new strength, while the congregation erupted in joyous shouts. Elizabeth, however, recognized him from the street market. He wasn't disabled. He was a paid actor, paid to pretend for this miracle. Cassandra had become one of the wealthiest women in the area, with a mansion filled with gold-plated furniture, expensive cars, and personal staff. She called it a reward from God. But Elizabeth knew that no blessing had yet arrived for her poor neighbors, who continued to give until they had nothing. Amid all her scheme, Cassandra wielded her power not only to deceive, but also to control lives, even breaking up families of her own selfish gain and interest. She took a particular interest in wealthy, influential men who attended her church, especially those she sensed could easily be manipulated. If she set her sights on a married man, she would concoct visions and divine revelations that would cast doubt upon his wife, creating chaos in the household. During one particular scandalous service, Cassandra singled out a successful businessman named Mr. Kelechi. She called him to the front of the congregation, drastically raising her hands as if receiving a divine message from God. "Brother Kelechi," she declared, "the Lord is showing me a troubling vision, a dark cloud surrounding your household, someone close to you, someone you trust deeply, is working against your blessing. As expected, Mr. Kelechi looked alarmed, his eyes widened with shock and fear. "Prophetess, who could it be?" he asked, desperately eager to protect his fortune and his family. Cassandra leaned in, lowering her voice to a solemn whisper. "It's your wife. I see her spirit entangled in a web of envy and greed, blocking your breakthrough," she added. "But fear not. Mama Celestine is here to help you with my special guidance. I can break this curse." Over time, Cassandra convinced Mr. Kelechi that his wife's supposed negative energy was the reason for his business struggles. She encouraged him to distance himself emotionally, assuring him that deliverance would come if he followed her instincts. What she didn't tell Mr. Kelechi was her real motive. She intended to draw him closer to her, knowing he was vulnerable. She began sending him private messages, inviting him for special prayer sessions at her mansion under the pretense of purging his spirit from his wife's supposed bad influence. This session, however, took a different turn. Cassandra manipulated Mr. Kelechi, feeding him flattering words and assurance of a life filled with blessing if he will satisfy her desire. In no time, Mr. Kelechi found himself entangled in an affair with Cassandra, convinced that his loyalty to her would bring him divine favor. This pattern repeated with other wealthy men in the congregation. Cassandra sowed seeds of doubts between wives and husbands. Elizabeth, the young woman who had been investigating Cassandra, grew increasingly disturbed as she learned of these manipulative tactics. This wasn't just spiritual deception. It was a web of lies that destroyed families and tore relationships apart. Cassandra's actions were beyond sinful. They were predatory. Another unsettling practice was that Cassandra claimed that she could bless any jerry can of water, transforming it into holy remedy for all troubles, illness, financial challenge, and all for a fee. People would leave their jerry can of water in her office for prayer. Behind closed doors, Cassandra would pour a pack of salt and sugar into each jerry can, saying, "Now take this water home and drink from it every day." The sugar and salt created a slight change in taste, convincing congregants that the water was truly blessed. One evening, Elizabeth overheard a conversation between two of Cassandra's closest aides, Felix and Linda, discussing the jerrycan trick. Can you believe they are paying that much just for a dash of salt and water? Linda laughed, shaking her head. Elizabeth felt a surge of fear but stood her ground, her heart filled with the courage to see her mission through. She knew Cassandra's days of deception were numbered. The truth was out there, ready to be revealed, and there is no turning back now. On another fateful night, driven by a mixture of curiosity and courage, Elizabeth decided to follow Cassandra. She waited in the river behind Cassandra's mansion, clutching her phone tightly, hoping to capture whatever dark secret was hidden. The clock struck midnight. Elizabeth saw Cassandra emerge from her mansion, moving gracefully towards the river, her steps almost gliding across the ground. Elizabeth's heart raced as she watched Cassandra at the riverbank. The prophetess looked up at the sky and began chanting in a strange language, one that sounded ancient and unsettling. Then before Elizabeth's very eyes, Cassandra's form began to change. Her skin changed, her Her skin changed and everything covering her body and legs melted together. Her eyes glowed as she slid slightly into the water, disappearing under the surface with a splash. Elizabeth gasped, barely able to process what she had seen. She realized that Cassandra was not just a fraud, she was something beyond human, something malevolent. Elizabeth stumbled back, her mind racing. This truth was more terrifying than she could have imagined. Cassandra wasn't merely deceiving her congregation, she was manipulating them with powers that stemmed from the depths of a dark occultic world. The next morning, Elizabeth returned to the church, her spirit heavy but resolved. She knew now that her mission was not just to reveal Cassandra's fraudulent practices, but to also expose the dangerous forces she was harnessing. But Cassandra, aware of Elizabeth's growing suspicion, took note. Her piercing gaze lingered on Elizabeth during the service, her smile sharp as a blade. During the altar call that day, Cassandra announced that she had a special blessing for one person in the congregation who was called to serve a divine mission. She fixed her gaze on Elizabeth, who froze as Cassandra called her forward. "Elizabeth, come forward," Cassandra said, her voice smooth but laced with undertone of menace. "The Lord has shown me that you carry a heavy burden. Come, let Mama Celestine lift it for you." Elizabeth's heart pondered, but she stepped forward, not wanting to reveal her fear. As Cassandra laid a cold hand on her forehead, Elizabeth felt a chilling sensation run through her body. She heard Cassandra whisper in her ear, "You are treading dangerous water, my child. Be careful, for some secrets are not meant to be uncovered." Elizabeth swallowed hard but refused to back down. She would continue her mission to expose Cassandra, but she now knew the stakes were higher than she had imagined. There was no turning back. Now, Elizabeth's courage became her guiding light as she continued to gather evidence against Cassandra. With every passing day, she uncovered more layers of deception and dark manipulation, which confirmed Cassandra's reach beyond mere mortal influence. It was now clear to Elizabeth that her mission was about more than just exposing Cassandra's lies. It was also about freeing innocent souls born by Cassandra's sinister practices. But Elizabeth fully released her gathered recordings, video and testimonies to the media, and the world was shocked when she did that. Reports spread like wildfire exposing Cassandra's deceitful miracles, stage healings and occult connections. Congregations who had once revered her now looked on in disbelief, feeling betrayed by the person they once called Mama Celestine. Many wept openly, mourning the years and money they had poured into her ministry, only to realize it had been carefully orchestrated illusion. In her final address to the church, Elizabeth spoke to the congregation, offering words of wisdom. "Brothers and sisters, this experience has taught me something crucial. Just because someone calls themselves a prophet or servant of God doesn't mean that they are. We must be discerning and vigilant, seeking the truth beyond appearance. Not every church or prayer house represents God's light, and not everyone who claims to be a pastor is genuine." She went on to remind everyone that while Cassandra's story has cast a dark shadow, it didn't mean all spiritual leaders were deceivers. They were true servants of God, men and women who worked tirelessly in humility and sincerity to bring God's love and truth to his people. They don't ask for wealth or demand strange sacrifices. They simply live in a way that reflects the goodness and mercy of the Almighty. Thank you for watching. Please, if you enjoyed this story, consider liking, commenting your thoughts and subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much and see you in my next story.